In the autumn of 1888, London was already holding its breath. A killer was at work in the East End, and the city's police were racing to catch him. But on the banks of the Thames, far from Whitechapel, workmen laying the foundations of a grand new building made a discovery that would stop even seasoned detectives cold. Hidden inside the very foundations of the Metropolitan Police's magnificent new headquarters was the torso of a woman. Her head, her arms, her legs taken from her, and she herself taken from history. Her name lost forever. The case became known as the Whitehall Mystery, and more than a century later, the woman in the foundations has no name, and the person who put her there has never been brought to justice. Over the next hour, we will lay every piece of this puzzle in front of you: the evidence, the geography, the timeline, and the questions that have haunted investigators ever since. By the time we are done, the clues will be yours, and we invite you to weigh them, question them, and decide for yourself what the evidence tells us about who was capable of this and why. Chapter 1. Buried Beneath Scotland Yard. October 1888. London was already afraid. On the north bank of the Thames, workmen were breaking ground for the Metropolitan Police's grand new headquarters. The site would be called Scotland Yard. On the 2nd of October, a workman's shovel struck something soft in a sealed vault beneath the foundations. He did not need to look closely. The smell told him everything he needed to know. Work stopped entirely. Police were summoned to the very ground their new headquarters was being built upon. What they recovered was wrapped carefully, deliberately, in black fabric. Think about that wrapping for a moment, because it tells us something about the person who left it there. This was not a hurried disposal. Someone had planned this. What they had found was a torso, the torso of a woman. The head, the arms, the legs, they were nowhere to be found. Let's open the board. The location: Victoria Embankment, London, England, and unknown. The unidentified victim. Chapter 2. A City Carved Apart. London, autumn 1888. The city was already holding a secret. Scattered across its bridges, its riverbanks, its quiet excavations. On 11th September, a human arm was pulled from the Thames near Pimlico. Days later, a leg was unearthed from a shallow pit in the same part of the city. The remains belonged to one woman, but investigators first had to piece that together from fragments spread across miles. Each piece had been deliberately wrapped, not discarded, but placed. Whoever carried these pieces across London knew the city, its patterns, its hiding places, its rhythms. Consider that for a moment. The planning this required, the control. What does that tell us about the person responsible? Their patience, their knowledge of this city. Investigators searched the missing persons' records and found nothing. No family had come forward, no employer, no neighbor. No one in London claimed to know her. She had lived in this city, and when she vanished, the city simply moved on without her. But deep beneath a construction site in Whitehall, the answer to who she was lay waiting, buried under the foundations of Scotland Yard itself. On the board so far, unknown, the unidentified victim. Now we pin up unknown, the suspected killer. Chapter 3. The Woman Nobody Missed. October 1888, London. What investigators had recovered from the construction site beneath New Scotland Yard was partial. A torso, nothing more. The pathologist estimated the woman was between 24 and 40 years of age. One clue clung to the remains. A fragment of black silk dress, finely made, suggesting a woman of some means. Detectives circulated a description to every police division in London. No one came forward. No missing persons report matched her description anywhere in the Metropolitan Police records. Consider what that silence means. A woman in a fine silk dress, and not one person in this city of 5 million had reported her gone. What do you make of that? Was she a stranger to London? Recently arrived, unknown, unrooted? Or had someone ensured that no one would come looking? Whoever she was, the evidence was beginning to suggest she had not been chosen at random, and that whoever chose her knew exactly how invisible she would remain. On the board so far, unknown, the suspected killer. Now we pin up Frederick Williamson, the Metropolitan Police Chief. Chapter 4. The Vault That Should Not Exist. In October 1888, workers at a new government building on the Embankment made a discovery no one was prepared for. Deep within the foundations of what would become the new Metropolitan Police headquarters, Scotland Yard, lay a sealed brick vault. Inside it, wrapped in cloth, was the torso of a woman. The site employed hundreds of men working in rotating shifts every hour of the day. Foremen logged arrivals and departures at every entrance, and yet someone carried a human torso through that controlled perimeter unseen. The vault itself had been bricked up. The mortar was not fresh. That means access required knowing the vault existed before most workers on site did. Think carefully about what that tells us. This was not a panic disposal. Someone had surveyed this space, identified the vault, and returned with the body. What kind of person has that level of access to a sealed government construction site? And what does that access say about their position, their connections, their world? Because the answer to that question may tell us everything. And it is buried somewhere we have not yet looked. On the board so far, Frederick Williamson, the Metropolitan Police Chief. Now we pin up Sep. 1888, arm found in Thames near Pimlico. Chapter 5. Jack's Shadow and a Second Killer. By autumn 1888, all of London's dread had a single name: Jack the Ripper. But inside Scotland Yard, senior detectives were quietly tracking something else entirely. A series of dismembered torsos had been recovered from the Thames since 1887. The victims were women, never identified, their remains carefully parceled and separately disposed of. Scotland Yard's own surgeon noted the dismemberments showed anatomical precision, methodical, unhurried cuts. This was nothing like the Whitechapel wounds. The Yard formally recorded these as a separate series. The press, consumed by Ripper fever, barely noticed. Here is the detail that stops investigators cold. The torso killer left no wounds of rage. Think about what that means. What kind of mind works that carefully, that invisibly, in a city already consumed by panic? Victorian London, it seems, was host to two predators moving through the same shadows simultaneously. One became legend. The other was almost entirely forgotten. The question driving this investigation is not how one was missed, but why the other was buried. On the board so far, Sep. 1888. Arm found in Thames near Pimlico. Now we pin up 2 Oct. 1888. Torso found in Scotland Yard foundations. Chapter 6. The signature in the cuts. In October 1888, a pathologist sat down with what had been recovered from the vault beneath New Scotland Yard's construction site. His report was precise, and it was deeply troubling. The dismemberment had not been frenzied. The cuts, the pathologist concluded, followed the body's natural articulations with deliberate, practised accuracy. This was not the work of someone improvising in panic. The pathologist's word, recorded and repeated, was knowledge. Whoever did this had handled a blade in a professional capacity. A surgeon, a butcher, a military anatomist. Think about what that means for a moment. In 1888, London, a skilled man with a blade was not a rare creature. The city was full of them. But consider who, among all of them, could also move freely through an active Metropolitan Police construction site. What kind of person would raise no suspicion in either world? The world of the knife and the world of the law. The answer, when it comes, will force us to look somewhere far closer to the investigation itself. On the board so far, 2 Octadas, more in 888. Torso found in Scotland Yard foundations. Now we pin up 17 Octant 888. Left leg found buried nearby. Chapter 7. The Construction Site Conspiracy. In the autumn of 1888, the Whitehall construction site was a controlled world, fenced, watched, and logged. The Metropolitan Police were building their new headquarters there, a fact that would later seem impossible to ignore. Contractors held signed permits to enter, but the records for October are incomplete. Several days show no watchman's signature at all. At least 14 separate labor gangs cycled through the site that month. No foreman could account for every man who passed through the gate after dark. Here is what should stop you. Whoever placed the remains in that vault understood the site's layout with precision. Think carefully. Does that speak to a worker with daily access, or someone who made a single, calculated visit? Several laborers were dismissed from the site without explanation in the weeks surrounding the discovery. Their names were recorded, but their whereabouts afterward were never followed up by investigators. Scotland Yard, the very institution meant to solve this crime, was being built on the ground where it was committed. Was this location chosen because it was convenient, or because it was a message aimed directly at the Metropolitan Police itself? On the board so far, 17 Oct. 1888. Left leg found buried nearby. Now we pin up 1889. Case linked to Thames Torso series. Chapter 8. 3 theories, no answers. By 1888, investigators had 3 competing explanations for what happened beneath the new Scotland Yard building. The first theory placed an opportunist at the center, someone who exploited the chaos of an active construction site. Construction sites in Victorian London were ungoverned at night, open unlit and unguarded. This theory requires no special knowledge, only nerve and opportunity. The second theory demands more, that whoever deposited the remains had insider access to the sealed vault. The vault's location was not public knowledge. Only workers and certain officials knew it existed. The third theory is the one that sits most uncomfortably. A deliberate act of display, chosen to humiliate the very institution being built above it, to hide something inside Scotland Yard, before Scotland Yard existed, would have been a statement of terrible confidence. Consider the three theories now. Which one does the evidence actually allow? The opportunist cannot explain the vault. The insider cannot explain the absence of any credible suspect. The calculated display cannot explain why the body was never meant to be found. Every theory accounts for some of the evidence, and every theory fails somewhere. But there is one detail, a detail in the cuts themselves, that none of these theories has yet explained. On the board so far, 1889, case linked to Thames torso series. Now we pin up a key clue. Decomposed female torso. Chapter 9. A case quietly buried. By the autumn of 1888, Scotland Yard was a department on fire. The Whitechapel murders consumed every available inspector, every hour, every resource. The Whitehall torso case, the woman found in pieces beneath the future Scotland Yard, was assigned to Chief Inspector John Shore. Shore's team canvassed morticians, hospitals, and workhouses across London and found nothing. No one came forward to claim her. The investigation produced one formal record, a case file opened in October 1888. Within weeks, the file was set aside, not closed, simply set aside. Consider what that means. The investigators knew she existed, knew how she died, and simply ran out of time to ask why. What does it tell you? That no inquiry, official or otherwise, was ever formally reopened. New Scotland Yard was completed and opened in 1890, directly above where she had been found. For decades, officers worked, argued, and investigated within those walls, never knowing whose story was sealed beneath their feet. She was never identified, and whoever carried her there has never been named. On the board so far, a key clue. Decomposed female torso. Now we pin up a key clue. Severed arm. Thames recovered. Chapter 10. The board is yours now. This is where we stop moving forward and lay everything flat. Human remains, carefully separated, discovered beneath the foundations of Scotland Yard. The cuts were not random. They carried the precision of someone trained. The site was sealed, and yet someone had been inside. The woman at the center of this case was never formally identified. No missing persons report matched her. No one came forward to claim her. The proximity to the Ripper murders haunted investigators, but the signature in the cuts pointed somewhere different. Someone with access, with knowledge, and with reason to ensure she was never found. Now the board is yours. Given the surgical knowledge, the impossible access, and the silence around her identity, what is your theory of who could have done this and why? Tell us your reasoning in the comments, the timeline, the motive, the kind of person the evidence points toward. If you want to keep following this case, subscribe, because one detail we have not yet shown you changes everything. On the board so far, a key clue: severed arm, Thames recovered. Now we pin up a key clue: buried leg, construction site.